Step on up, sit down, twist off that bottle top or crack open that can, and welcome to Porch Matters. This is Terry Cagle coming to you from my back porch. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am, the name of this show is authentic. On Porch Matters, our saying is this: big issues or just a friendly conversation, no topic is off limits. We take pride in being able to talk about anything with each other in an open discussion. Open discussion is one of the only ways to learn. Your perspectives could be changed. You could change the perspective of others. Friends and family, welcome to another episode of Porch Matters. I'm glad you're here. I want to thank every one of you for listening. Of all the things that you can give somebody, time is the one thing that you can't get back. Hope you enjoy the show. If this is your first time listening, hope you like, follow, or subscribe to whichever platform you're listening to me on. I hope everybody's had a great and wonderful couple of weeks. There's a chill in the air tonight out here on the porch. I don't guess Lady Winter is done with us yet. I actually had to put some sleeves on again. Hopefully, that's coming to an end real soon. Looking forward to spring coming and not being able to breathe because everything out here is yellow for a little while. Be a nice little change, right? I'm going to start up a new segment on the show. Going to give it a shot and see what you think. If you like it, let me know on social media, please. I'm going to call it Thoughts From The Porch. You're going to be seeing some random quotes, random sayings, things like that. If you like it, give it some kind of a reaction. If you really like it, share it with your friends. Just going to be trying some different things and basically seeing exactly what you like. Today, I had to go to the funeral home. One of my great uncles, my last great uncle, actually. His name was David Hodge. If you're from the community around here, you'll know him. He passed away this past week, and his funeral was today. It was a really nice service, and the minister that actually done the service today said something that's kind of stuck with me, and I really just wanted to share some thoughts. The man said people preach their own funeral by the way they live. The more I thought about that, he's right. Folks, we only got one shot at this life. One day, we will all take our last breath and we will be gone. What kind of story will be told about you after you're gone? What will people remember about you? People use the word legacy a lot. One of the definitions of legacy is the long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc. that took place in the past or of a person's life. A person's legacy is something that is passed on. Your character is the part of your legacy that is the most important, not the money or the things you leave behind. Were you a man of your word? Were you a man that provided for your family? Did you leave the part of the world you're from a better place than whenever you found it? What did you teach your kids or the people that looked up to you? No matter who you are, someone is always watching you. Someone is always learning from you. Houses get destroyed. Land gets sold. Cars fall apart. Family heirlooms can be sold or broken. Other than going to live for eternity in heaven with Jesus, the impact that we have on others and the stories people tell are the only ways we can live on. Gary Cagle is my dad. Sam Williams was my granddad. Tilda Williams was my grandmother. They live on through what they taught me. The memories that I have and the impact they had on me and a lot of other people's lives. I've made a ton of mistakes in this life, and I hate to use The Lion King as a reference. But there have been a couple of occasions to where I needed to hear a voice saying, "Remember who you are." Unless this podcast takes off, Stacy leaves me and I find a sugar mama, or something miraculous happens. Realistically speaking, I'm not going to have a big, quote, legacy to leave as far as things. I live paycheck to paycheck, and right now I have no retirement plans in place. Going to look into maybe trying to find a financial advisor or something along those lines to come on the show and help us all out on that, just FYI. But the legacy that I want to leave, the message that I want preached at my funeral, is one that talks about how I was a man of my word. How if I told you I would do something, I did it. A man that had a great work ethic. A man that loved life and he loved people. Always did everything in his power to make sure the people he loved were in a better place. That I was a man that loved God and tried his best to make sure others saw God in me. What do you want your legacy to be? It's being written now. It's your job to make it a good one. On this episode, international award-winning author, blogger Jack Lafountain joined me on the porch. Jack shared his story about what got him into writing books, where his inspiration comes from, and advice to writers who are wanting to be published. If you've ever had an interest in publishing a book, you're going to enjoy this conversation. Without further ado, let's get started. Jack Lafountain.
Yeah.
Welcome to the porch, my friend. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate being here.
I'm glad we were finally able to get everything straight to where we could get it done.
Oh, yeah. Me too. I was looking forward to it.
Same. You reached out and I was like, absolutely. I had seen you a few times on social media and I was like, I'd really like to talk to this man. He seems very interesting. And then luck have it, you reached out to me as well. So I appreciate that. I really do.
Oh, well, glad to do it. Yeah.
So what got you let's just jump right in. How was life growing up and what got you interested in writing?
I write a lot of horror stuff now, and when I was young, I mean, I was hooked on the Universal monsters, the original, from the 30s and 40s, the Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein. I grew up with all of those, and then all of the old Vincent Price horror movies. I spent Saturday afternoons at the theater watching all of those, and I mean that kind of. And I was a big reader of Edgar Allan Poe growing up. I didn't really get started writing until rather late in life. I was in my 40s, I guess. Yeah, 40s when I started writing full time. But I spent time as aircraft mechanic in the Vietnam time. Then later became a minister and left that for nursing, and I did travel nursing for years. And actually, that's when I started writing. I was in college. I'd written some stories and just a few things that just, no one was ever going to see. They were going to stay in the desk drawer forever, and no one was going to see them. When I was going to college, my sophomore year of college, I took sophomore English, and we had an assignment to write a story about the most interesting place we ever ate. So I wrote the story, I turned it in, and the grade I got was see me after class. And I thought, oh, that's never good.
No, sir.
So I went and saw the professor's office after class. He said, I don't think you understood the assignment. That this is supposed to be a real place. And I said, I promise you, this is a real place. It was a taco place on the island of Okinawa that I went to while I was there. And I said, this is a real place. This is really what it looks like, and this is the way it is. So anyways, I got an A on the assignment, but he wrote on the bottom of the paper, your writing style sounds a lot like a fellow named Gene Shepherd. I'd heard it. But he told me that he wrote a book called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. And so I looked up the book, and I was going to buy the book. And about the time I was going to buy the book, it was Christmas time, and the Christmas Story came on, with Ralphie and all of them. And at the end of the movie, that was the first time I'd ever seen it. At the end of the movie, the credits rolled, and it says that this Christmas Story was adapted from a book by Gene Shepherd called "In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash." That's where that story came from. And I thought, wow, if it sounds like that, I might be able to do okay with this. I might let somebody read it sometime. It was a while after that before I actually published anything or thought about writing for public. I thought about it after that. I took one writing course. That was back in the days when correspondence courses were really correspondence courses. You wrote the assignment out, you mailed it to the college. The instructor mailed back what they thought, and really went by mail. That's how long ago that was. But um, I did start doing some writing. Like that, I love horror stories, and I also love westerns. So the very first book that I ever wrote was a horror story that takes place in 1870s Texas. So I tell people it's cowboys, Indians, and werewolves,
Yes, sir.
which it is, and that's the story basically.
Yes.
And I wrote that one, and it did okay, and it took me about 5 or 6 years to ever write another book, but a few years ago, I had back surgery, which pretty much ended my nursing career. Uh, I could still do it if I wanted to work in an office or something, but I was an ER nurse, and ER is where I wanted to be. And it was like, I can't do this for 12 hours at a time anymore. So uh, I retired, and then I started writing full time. And that, really kind of let me go with all of those stories and those ideas. And I now have, what is it, eight, 18 books that have been published.
As far as your writing, let's go back to your first book. How difficult was it to not only just find your inspiration, but complete the book plus go through the publishing process?
Um, it it took actually a while to write the whole book because I was working full
Yes, sir.
time. I'd write it in, it's a break. I worked night shifts, so on the days I was off, I was up in the middle of the night too writing, uh, even though I had to get up early with the kids or whatever. But so it took a while to get through the book. Um, but the original idea for it was I'm there's a couple of writing styles. Well, there's a whole spectrum, but uh, on the polls there are those that are called plotters, and what they do is they plot out the whole book before they begin. Okay, this is going to happen. This is going to happen in this chapter. This is going to happen in that chapter, and all the way through the book to the end. And then they have on the other on the other extreme is where I am, and they're called pantsers because they write by the seat of their pants. And that's the way I do it. I have an idea for usually for a start of the story. They come from different places. Um, Sometimes I'll be listening to a song and say, and a completely different sort of idea comes to me what I hear. There's an old '60s song by the Zombies, and it's called "She's Not There." And
Yes, sir.
I had started into a story, and I had a heroine and the villain, and then I thought I need the heroine needs a friend, and I was listening to that song, and it came to me said her friend's a ghost. She's not there. She sees her, to her she's real, but to everybody else she's not there. And so that kind of became the idea for that. Uh, and that's kind of the way some things come to me. The most successful book that I've got, I had an idea for the first chapter, and I got that. I was a travel nurse, and I lived in an RV for a while I had a little dog,
Yes, sir.
And one morning, this dog just went wild and charged up to the door, growling, snarling, barking, and it was very unusual for her to do that. Of course, I opened the door, I got up, opened the door, nothing there. But when I sat back down, I thought, what if something had been there?
Never know.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
that became the first chapter of the book I wrote. This fellow, he's a baker, and he's up early, and suddenly his dog goes wild, barking at the door, and it kind of gives him the chills about opening it, but he finally opens the door, and uh, the werewolf grabs.
Nice.
That kind of kicked off the story, and then it went. The story goes on through the werewolves in this little town, and the story is about the sheriff trying to solve the mystery of who's the werewolf, stop the werewolf from killing everybody, and that became the book. But like I said, the inspiration was just that when I started writing that first chapter, I had no idea where the book was going, uh, and that it was just took it that idea and uh, I listened to a writer in a conference one time said, if you're going to write a murder story, you have to begin with a murder. So I thought, okay, there you go. There's a murder. And start the story. I actually had some other writers critique that. I read the first chapter for them in a authors group, and they said, "Well, why did you make us like this guy and then immediately kill him off?" I said, "Well, if you didn't like him, it wouldn't matter that he got killed off. But he,
Uh,
he got
you're
liked him, so he got killed off." Of course, the question most of them had was, "What happened to the little dog?" And it was like, "Don't tell me the little dog died. We don't want to hear that." Well, unfortunately, that's what happened. But
well,
he died as a hero, trying to save save his
well,
master.
that's just like with Game of Thrones. Whenever the books came out, and then the TV series. That's what they did. Character development got you invested in the characters, and then all of a sudden, I was told before I started the series, if you like a character, don't get invested in them.
Yeah,
That was the only thing that I was told. I was like, that sounds crazy. That's not the way you do it, but sure enough,
yeah.
you know.
It, yeah. It does keep you involved in the story, and the sheriff from that book, he's still around. I'm writing book number 7 in that series now, and he's still around. He's been there through Rougarous and voodoo and vampires and uh, all kinds of different things, but he's still around. And I tell my publisher, uh, basically, I like one story. I started the book. It was the third book in this series, and I think I started the book the first 3 or 4 chapters, and I wrote it and then rewrote it about 4 times before I decided, okay, this is the book. It's like, what's going on? It's, well, the lead character in the book, he told me I had it all wrong, and I tell people, and don't bother. The characters in my book talk to me and tell me what's going on. That
Exactly.
and that's how I get through the book.
That's tough.
In fact, I wrote a
That's understandable.
yeah, I wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago. I think it's like, what happens when they somebody asked, what happens when they quit talking to you? And I'm like, well, the thing that I've found that works. At first, I get frustrated about it, and eventually, what works is, okay, I more or less tell them, I'm just going to start writing, and if you don't like it, you better speak up. Okay, because I'll just write the story the way I want it, and it usually works. I'll start writing it. I'll get into the chapter or maybe 2 chapters in, and it's like, okay, this is not the this is wrong, and this is right or whatever. Make whatever changes need to be made in it. So
I don't see why people would think that you were, anything other than a good writer whenever it comes to the statement that you made, talking about how your characters speak to you. Whenever I'm not an author like you. I did dabble a little bit way back when, and I've got the bug. I just haven't really just sat down and done it yet. But I can see how whenever you create characters and as the characters develop and everything, well, of course, you wouldn't, as you're writing, you'd be like, well, that character wouldn't do that. This character
Right.
wouldn't do that. I totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, and that's something to keep in mind that they wouldn't do that, and just like I said, you become invested. You kind of learn the way they think, and I tell some of the new authors that we've got, because I work with the publishing company too as the sort of the content editor. The stories that come in, I'll look at them for content, and then um, I work with the authors as far as shaping the story, and then we have other editors that actually do all the grammar and punctuation. And I can do that, but most of the time I go through it so fast I make as many mistakes as anybody. In fact, my publisher says, you get onto some of these authors for doing this or that. I said, you do the same thing. And I said, of course I do. I'm a writer too. I make the same mistakes they do.
People at my office get tired of me trying to proofread their emails. So I definitely understand that one too. What's
yeah.
it? You're working with the publishing company. What's it like being on both sides of the fence?
I like it. I've kind of planned this year to spend more time actually on the publishing side. Um, I say that, and then I've got plans for 4 books this year, but that's but I'm cutting back. I did, I think, 6 books last year, so I'm cutting back.
That's
But
true. It is a little bit
yeah,
of a cutback.
but well, of course, one of the reasons I am too because I ended a series in December. Yeah, December or January was the last book in that series came out. So, which was the original story that I talked about the Cowboys, Indians, and werewolves. This was book 3 in that one, and that's going to be the end of that series. But I still have 2 series that go on, and it's when I write is kind of I kind of look at it as sort of the same thing as an actor getting into a role and getting involved in the story. And one thing my publisher tells me, or I actually I did. I posted on Facebook. Well, I'm off to New Orleans, and I it usually never fails to get to, when are you leaving? You're not going to be here for this or that. And I said, no, wait. I mean, I'm going there to write. I'll be back in a little bit, but I do get lost in it. I can, I get busy writing and everything else, but the story kind of gets lost pretty much, and until somebody shakes me out of it a bit. But
once you get
and I
once you get in the zone, you kind of just stay there.
yeah, and it's well, once you get there, you don't want to leave, so
Right.
going. But yeah, so that's kind of the way I do that. Uh, but my characters and places are real. I've had people from some of the places. Most of the stories that I write, I've actually lived in one of those places or for a short time anyway. So like I said, I was a travel nurse for a lot of years. So I lived a lot of places for 13 weeks and then moved on. But most all the stories are set in places that I've lived in and I've been to. I have a couple that are not. And I've had people who are from that area say, well, when were you there? And I I've never been there. In fact, the Moon series of books take place in New Orleans and just outside of New Orleans. And I said, well, when have you been there? I drove through once. I spent one night at Baton Rouge one time, but I've never been there. And I had a fellow that picked up one of the books with us. He was a professor at Tulane and said, yeah, it's, I can't believe you haven't been here. Well, I have, I have it in my mind.
Yes, sir.
Other than that, nah, not really been there.
Were they being complimentary of the way that you wrote and everything about how they couldn't
Yeah,
tell that you had never been there?
yeah, that it sounds real, sounds authentic, sounds like the place, and what they, their view of the city. I don't know exactly how that comes about, but it works.
Well, as long as it works.
As long as, yeah, that's me. As long as it works. I am going though in April. I'm going to New Iberia, Louisiana, down in Cajun country for a book signing, uh, book fair, and I'm going to have a booth there. I'm looking forward to that.
It is a completely different world down there.
It is, yes,
And I mean that with all due respect to anybody from Louisiana listening to this. I live in the middle of Alabama. It's a whole nother world from somebody else.
yeah,
You you're you know exactly what I'm talking about.
right, yeah,
But it's a place unlike that I have ever been before. And there are so many different cultures and backgrounds that have over time and over the years just mingled and meshed.
right.
It's I mean it with the utmost compliments. It's a whole nother world.
It is, and yeah, and it is. And when I was doing travel nursing, I had people tell me, "I don't know how you can do that. Every 13 weeks, you just pick up and go someplace else, and go to work. How do you do that?" I said, "Well, basically, a hospital is a hospital is a hospital. All
Yes, sir.
what you really are trying to do when you go, the hardest thing about it is knowing where everything's at and how they do things there.
That's the
And
only thing that changes.
yeah, that's the like I said, the nursing part of it doesn't change, medicine doesn't change, but it is different every place you go. And how uh, I live in Huntsville, Alabama now, and it's they do things differently here than they did in Boise when I lived there a couple of years ago. Uh, it's all it. A lot of things about life are the same, and for me, a lot of things about, of course, about writing are the same. A lot of my ideas are based on like that first story. What if this happened? Uh, and so, just try and fit it to the place, the time that like I said, the characters. Is this the way they would act? Is this what they would do? Is this what it's like?
You could even tap into the paranormal with that because if you listen to any paranormal coaches or anything like that, there's a bunch of different stories out there to where dogs and cats have always sensed things that were there before humans were able to.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Like I said, I spent a few years in the Pacific Northwest and met a lot of people that were into Bigfoot and Sasquatch. I still do that. I've got one book of short stories about Bigfoot that were collected from all the people I talked to, and then I sort of blended them together into into fictionalized stories. I tell people they're the things that are in there. People actually told me this happened to them. But one of the problems, it's not really a problem, but like listening to some of the Bigfoot story podcasts and things, is that for me, in a lot of ways, it sounds like listening to court testimony. But then that's the way it should be, because what they're trying to do is tell you just the facts
Yes, sir.
of what happened. And and I told when I wrote this book, so my goal is to tell the facts, but at the same time tell a bigger story. And so, I want to get it as right as I could. The only one that's completely off base, there's four stories in that book. The only one that's completely off base is one story I wrote from Bigfoot's point of view. And a lot of research went in. In fact, I wrote a magazine article on that. It's called Becoming Bigfoot. Uh, is trying to do like I do with my other characters, is get into the character as a sort of as a role. And I started out with a lot of the people in the Bigfoot community. Tell me how Bigfoot thinks. And I got a lot of feedback on that and a lot of help with that, and kind of worked with us. Okay, so I I believe Bigfoot thinks from some of the stories that I got. So if he thinks, how does he face this? in the story, it's the worst winter in 100 years, and he's trying to get him and his mate and the little one through the hard winter. What's he doing? Then I thought, okay, I've got it made. Bigfoot thinks. I get into the thinking like Bigfoot, and the very next moment it was like, but wait, Bigfoot doesn't speak English, so what does he call things? You know,
They grunt a lot,
yeah.
from what I've been told. They
So
grunt and yell a lot.
that's what I hear. And I did get one fella when I was getting the feedback. Actually, he heard sounds, and he speaks. I think he said he speaks 7 or 8 languages, and they're very wide variety of languages. And what he heard going on in the woods there was, he said it was definitely language, but no language that he ever put, but just the way the sounds were put together. It sounded very much like language. So I said, okay, I've got to come up with what Bigfoot calls things. How does he see things? And I told people, I'm not as ambitious as Tolkien. I'm not writing a Bigfoot dictionary. I'm just going to come up with some things that and like one of the things I picked up and decided that it was the Bigfoot called people hey, because that's what he heard them say to each other. Hey, you know, hey, but hey this, hey that. So he calls people hey. That's what his word for it. It was a fun story to do. I enjoyed it.
Let's say there's somebody listening to this that's got the writing bug as well, that they just don't know how to get started. What would you tell them?
Well, I tell them some of the things I tell the writers that work for the publishing company or are publishing with us. That is that, and it's sort of that thing that when the characters don't speak, just writing, and that's what I tell them. Writers write. You just start writing, even if it doesn't matter if it makes sense. It doesn't matter if it's a good story. You just start writing, and you stick with it. It's very easy. I thought writing's work. It, a lot of our authors say, I can't imagine doing anything else, and this is yeah, and that's true, but it's also work because you start at. And it works. It's that way for me all the time. I start out on a book or a story. I'm all excited about it. I got this idea, and I start writing about it, and you get into it, and then it's like, what comes next? How do I say this? How do I do? And you kind of get bogged down. And that's one thing. Again, the people that do all the plotting of their books, that's one of the problems with us pantsers, is that we get in the middle of the story and we get bogged down about details and things that they do, but they take care of that before they get started. So, I mean, it's not something they don't do, but and so it becomes a little bit of work, and you have to stick with it. And I don't know how many times I get to that place in a story, and then I suddenly get an idea for a new story. And that's exciting. And you want to go run off and go do that. And it's like, no, you can't. I jot down a note or two, maybe a paragraph about it. I put it away. I said, I'm not touching it till I finish what I'm doing. And if it's a good idea and it's a good story, it'll still be there. And I've found that works. But yeah, I mean, and I forget the lady's name that said it, but some of the best advice I've got, you can always edit a bad page. You can't edit a blank page.
That's a true story.
So you just start writing, and hopefully, in the course of doing, I know maybe that's just me, but in the course of doing that, the ideas start to come, and how I can fit this together, and how I can make this into a story, and how it will work. But you kind of just have to start writing. When I was in high school, the English class I was in. That's one thing the teacher had us do for the first 10 minutes of every class is just sit down and write. Didn't have to be a complete story. It didn't really have to make sense. It could be, just whatever, but sit down and write and start writing. And then I again told our authors, well, I published a blog been quite a while back, but I sat down to I was the day's job was to write a blog post and sat down to do it, and nothing, no idea, nothing would come. And I'm sitting there looking at that blinking cursor, and it's like it's taunting me. Like, you know, you got to come up with an idea here. So I wrote a blog about having nothing to write about. Like, I'm sitting here looking at the cursor. I got nothing to write about. I started doing that, and you know, 500 words for the blog post in just a short time. But that's and that's what that's what I tell people who want to write. Just do it. Do the best you can. There's nothing wrong with studying writers, reading writers, but the most important thing to do is find your voice, your way of telling something. Uh, had one girl that said, I don't read books. She wants to be a writer. I don't read books because I don't want it to mess with my original ideas. And it's like there aren't any original ideas.
None.
But all of writing boils down to two things. Somebody's going on a trip, or somebody or something new came to town.
Make it just enough your own so you're not plagiarizing.
That's right. Make it your own, tell it your way, and that's the original thing about writing is telling it your way and in your words. Nobody else can do that. So if you do that, you're being original.
Okay. If somebody was going to start listening or start reading or listening to you, do you ever think you'd see the day when people were listening to books?
Oh, no, not really. But yeah, they sure do now. I honestly, my audiobooks sell better than the Kindle or the paperback. That's kind of something that's kind of taken off for me. But I'm surprised at the number of people that buy the audiobooks. Absolutely.
A lot of people will listen to a book or listen to a podcast or whatever on their way to work.
Oh
Or
yeah,
they'll
yeah,
listen throughout the day, or listen on the
yeah,
way home, whatever. It makes the time go by faster because I know, at least in my case anyway, I have done got to that age where new music to me just I
yeah, yeah. No,
and I would rather listen to either old stuff, or I'd rather listen to podcast, or I'd rather listen to an audiobook. There was a very long time that I did nothing but listen to podcasts for about 4 or 5 years.
yeah. I've listened to quite a few podcasts, and there's several, and I still listen to some. Not as many as I used to, only because I don't have the time to do it. But yeah, absolutely. But yeah, audiobooks kind of amaze me. I did once. I bought an audiobook it was on CD. That's how long ago. It kind of been a while. But I bought it because I was on a long trip,
Yes, sir.
and I bought it to listen to on the trip, and it went pretty well. The only problem I have again with a lot of it, I can get lost in the story and I'm not paying attention to my driving. But
It happens to the best of us, sir.
yeah, so that's something I kind of keeps me somewhat from the audiobooks. Although I do have them and I do listen to them when I'm at home. Sometimes if there's, like I said, there's nothing on TV, there's nothing that I want to listen to else. I'll put on the audiobook and take a listen to it, and
If
that kind of works.
if there's somebody listening to this for the first time that would really like to delve into your work, which book would you highly recommend them start with?
Um, it kind of depends on their interest. I would recommend Bayou Moon, which I still think is the best job I've done. but I found out I could be wrong about that.
Well,
I was talking to somebody actually on a podcast one time. We were talking about, uh, they asked that, and I was telling that, it's my favorite book, and I thought that was the best job I did. In fact, I wrote the next one that came after that in the series. It's called Blood Moon, and I told them that, I got finished with that. I thought this is a terrible story. I don't like it at all. It just, yeah, it's not quality I want. And I said, what are you talking about? That's the one that got all the rave reviews. Well, there you go. Shows you what I know.
where can people find you and basically find anything that they need to find out? Jack Lafountain.
Uh, well, I have a website. It's jacklafountainauthor.com, which is a good place to find me. Also, you can also find me on houseofhonorbooks.com.
Okay.
That's my publisher. And in fact, they may be more up to date on the samples. I know on the publisher website that they have samples of all the audiobooks if you want to take a listen. Even if you don't want an audiobook, you want paperback, you can get on there and take a listen to, what it's like.
Okay.
But and I say that about Bayou Moon being that one. I wrote the Death Rides the Red River, which is the Cowboys, Indians, and Werewolves, and I gave that to a friend of mine. She wanted to read it, and she read the book, and she's not a big horror fan, so she said, "Look, would you write me a Western that doesn't have a monster?" So I said, "I hadn't really thought about doing that, but okay, I'll do it." And I've got 4 books in that series now that they're Westerns, but no horror, just regular Western stories, pretty much. Um, and I've got 4 in that series right now.
Well, just FYI, I'm still working on Death Haunts the Red River.
Oh, okay.
And it was kind of funny that you mentioned Bayou Moon because it's next on my list, actually.
Oh, that's yeah. That's. I do like Death Rides the Red River, which was the first book I wrote, and it's been through a couple of revisions to be where it's at now. I sort of self published the first one, and uh, I found out too that I'm not really I'm no good at editing my own work. That's for sure. And I tell everybody, don't try just to edit your own. Don't just put it through spell checker or Grammarly or try to edit yourself. I know there's books about how to do that, and I was like, it doesn't work for me. Well, my editor had me read a sentence from my own work. What does this sentence say? And I told her. She said, "Read it again." I read it again. I said, "What does it say?" And I told her. I said, "No, it doesn't. Look at the words." Pointed them out. It does not say that, and it didn't. But I knew in my head that's what it was supposed to be, and so that's the way I saw it.
Yes, sir.
And I took her to point it out that this is. She said, "I know what you want to say, but you're not saying it. And this is not. You don't have the words in there that you think you do." So that is important if you're looking to publish. If I get a lot of things from people that um, talking about editors and cover design and all, and I've met a lot of people at book fairs and things that are self-published, and there's nothing wrong with self-publishing. It's all in about what you're trying to do. There's pros and cons to self-publishing, traditional publishing, and like I said, it all depends on what you're trying to do with it. And I do tell people, depending on what they want, if they're really looking, I recommend traditional publishing if you can find it. It's difficult, but we get at the publishing company, we get people asking, well, how much do you charge to publish a book? And they're amazed when we say nothing. Doesn't cost you. Send us the manuscript. If we're interested, we offer a contract. We go through the editing. It's proofread. Well, it's edited more than once. Then it's proofread. The book is formatted, covers designed, and all this. I said, well, how do you do that? Well, it works like this: you get royalties. Publishing company gets, and this has worked for all traditional publishers. The publisher gets a share, and the author gets a share. That's how the publisher makes their money for that. You can see it as one of the drawbacks of publishing is that, okay, the publisher, and honestly, the publisher gets a bigger share than you do.
Right.
It always, it just, that's just the way it goes. But
Unfortunately, on the business end of it, though, they're putting out more than what the author is.
they are. And when I talk to people who put out thousands of dollars, you know, to self-publish, and pretty much know that they're not going to make that money back. Of course, that's, one of the pluses of self-publishing is, of course, you get all the money.
It's true.
You have to invest some money, or hope. Well, not always. Some people are in a position they know somebody who can do cover design. They know somebody who can edit for them. People that can do this for them. And for them, self-publishing might be the absolute best way to go.
Right.
We've talked with people, and we don't, even though we have a publishing company, and I'm part of it. When people talk to us, if they, we've told them, your best option is to self-publish, because they have some resources and things. It's like, we give them, the pros and cons, and so, we don't, if you want to self-publish, we'll even help you do it. We'll direct you on how to get it done. We're we're of course we're a small operation, and we have, sometimes we're overloaded with manuscripts, not always, but a lot of times we're publishing. Looking at our list over here, we've got 6 books that we're working on right now. But we're glad to tell people, if they want to self-publish. And one of the people we talked to just recently wants to self-publish, and like, we'll tell you how to do it. We know how to. I've done it, and like, we'll be glad to tell you how to do it. We're not. We want you. We want your book out there. We want your writing out there,
Right.
and that's more important than whatever share we get from it. I mean,
right.
But we are. I mean, our publishing company, we do specialize in first-time authors. We want people who haven't published before, but who are very interested in writing and committed to writing. We want to help them get into print. I feel like I got some lucky breaks, and if I can share anything to help somebody else do it, I'm more than glad to.
That's awesome.
So,
people have to have somewhere to start, and it's awesome that you and your publishing company are able to do that.
My writing's been successful enough. We can underwrite the company with it. But we do like to, we get glad every morning when we check the stats and the sales and that. Like, oh yeah, so and so sold a book. All right, we're always glad for them. And we've got one of the authors that worked for us. We tell her, hopefully you'll outgrow our operation. You'll be a big name and more than what we can handle. And hey, that's what we want for you. Whenever you're ready to make that step, you make it.
Absolutely. Just remember us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just remember.
Remember us.
Yeah, don't forget us. But
Jack, I appreciate you coming on to the show.
I've had a great time.
If you would tell everybody where they can find you again.
All right, so I do have a Facebook page. You can find me on Facebook. It's facebook.com/author Jack Lafountain on Facebook. My website is jacklafountainauthor.com. And then the publishing website is houseofhonorbooks.com. And you can also find me on Amazon's Author Central, or look up any of the books in it, on there. I'm on Goodreads. I probably couldn't tell you the URL for that, but you can go on Goodreads and look up my name and you'll find me there.
Jack, I appreciate you, sir.
I had a great time. Thanks a lot for having me.
We'll have to do it again sometime.
Oh, yeah, anytime you'd like.
Big thanks to Jack Lafountain for coming onto the porch. If you enjoyed the conversation, find everything you need to know at jacklafountainauthor.com. Tell him you heard about him on Porch Matters. If you are new to the show and like what you hear, hit that like, subscribe, or follow button and download the episodes in our archives. If this show has been a positive addition to your life, please rate the show and leave a review. Won't take you but a minute, and it really would help the show. Find us on social media by typing Porch Matters Podcast into the search bar. Word of mouth is still the best way of sharing. Pick your favorite episode and share it with at least one person this week. There are a lot of people out there that have never heard of a podcast before. I sure would appreciate it. And I'll see you next time, right here on Porch Matters.